Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we talk about problems people face in their day-to-day lives. Let's start with a video.
My husband and I have been having issues in our marriage for a while. I didn't want to tell anyone because I thought we could handle it and get past it. It hasn't been the easiest thing dealing with a cheating husband the first time I called him out for cheating. He apologized and said that he would never do it again. I believed him with all my heart, so I decided that we could walk through it. This was 2 years ago. After the first incident, I was a little paranoid and it was hard for me to trust him again. But I did because he seemed to have changed. He was now coming home earlier. He was more present and caring. So I thought he realized his mistake and wanted to do better, but that was not the case. A week ago, my friend texted me to ask how things have been going with my husband, and she knew that he cheated the first time, and in her own opinion, I should have left at that time. I told her that everything was going fine, and he had been outstanding, and I was beginning to trust him again and let my guard down with him. I noticed that she was hesitant, so I encouraged her to speak up because I wanted to know precisely the issue. This friend in question wasn't one to speak about things that she wasn't sure of or just insinuated things and just left them in the air. She told me that she and her husband went on a dinner date the day before and she saw my husband with another lady. They were making some public display of affection. That broke my heart 1,000,000 times over. I couldn't believe my ears. My whole world had come crashing down. My husband promised me, he told me that he would change. I started to think of where I went wrong. Why couldn't he just be faithful to me and his kids? And why couldn't we be enough for him? I confronted him and told him that I wanted a divorce. He didn't deny cheating on me again or even ask me not to get the divorce, so I figured that my marriage was over. Some weeks ago, we had planned that our families would come to our house for lunch, so I couldn't cancel on them at the last minute. I decided that it would be the perfect time to let everyone know that we were getting a divorce. The only thing I was sad about were my kids. I didn't want them to live in a hole without two of their parents. That was the reason why I still stayed after the first time my husband cheated. I also didn't want them to see him differently, but I guess he didn't think of all that before behaving like an animal. My elderly daughter, I'm sure, already knew that something like that was coming because she was home when I was speaking to her father, and I wasn't being quiet at all. There is a lot of tension in the house right now. No one is laughing, and everyone is walking on eggshells. I reached out to a lawyer to start processing the divorce papers. It was a very emotional time for me, and I didn't want to prolong it more than necessary. My plan was to tell my kids that we were getting a divorce myself and let them understand what it meant for them. They weren't going to be around on the day our family came by because they had an event to go to, which was perfect. After all, I have been procrastinating about telling them. I don't want to hurt them, but it's out of my hands and there is not much I can do. I got ready for our guests. I'm a good cook, so most people are happy whenever the family decides to come over to my house instead of anybody else's. I make the best mashed potatoes and everyone loves them. I prepare the meal and set the table for lunch. Our family members from both sides started coming in one by one. When everyone came in, we started lunch. It was entertaining having everyone around. The joy was tangible, and I felt terrible telling them the news. Both of our families were closely knit, and we all loved each other. You couldn't even tell the difference between those from my husband's side and those from mine. It baffles me that my husband would want to throw all of it away. My mother-in-law noticed that I wasn't myself, so she asked me what the problem was. I was hesitant to break the news to everyone because I knew that their happy faces would become sad. I didn't say anything, and I think she understood that she wasn't to push further. Sometime later, my husband told everyone that we were thinking of separating, but he didn't say the real reason why. He made everyone believe that we weren't happy for a while, and it was my fault because I was getting distant and didn't have time for the family. It was funny that all of that was coming out of his mouth. He said he didn't want a divorce, but I insisted that I didn't want to be married to him anymore. Our family was surprised, and some of them tried to persuade me and give me advice on how I could give time to the family. I gave my husband a killing stare. He was happy that everyone bought his lie, and he had turned everything against me. I was the reason why we were getting a divorce. I excused myself to go and get the divorce papers. I hadn't told my husband that I got them already, so he was shocked when I threw them at his face. I had signed it and asked him to sign it since I was a horrible wife. I told everyone that he had been cheating on me, and this was the second time I had caught him cheating, and I didn't want to deal with it anymore. He didn't think I was going to tell everyone what he did because I would be embarrassed like the first time. When he cheated on me the first time, my friend was the only person I told. No one else knew because I wanted to keep it low key. I felt embarrassed that my husband would cheat on me, and I thought I would be laughed at. That was so naive. Over the years, I realized that it wasn't my fault if my husband decided to cheat. It was his choice, and he knew exactly what he was doing, so I would no longer punish myself for it. I still somehow knew that he was seeing other women even after he apologized the first time at the back of my mind. I knew he was just keeping it low key, but I didn't dare to confront him or speak up about it because I had no real evidence. I just knew that he wasn't being faithful to me. Because of the prior incident, he thought he could turn it all on me and I would say nothing. I have grown past that now. He hurt me big time, and I wasn't going to cover for his misbehaviors. Truthfully, I was reconsidering my divorce decision until he lied about everything to everybody in my presence. The nerve! I knew that there was no going back anymore. My husband had become someone I didn't recognize. When we were dating, he was attentive, caring, and thoughtful. Still, now even his kids can't get his attention because he was constantly distracted by something else. He didn't have anything to say except that he wouldn't sign the papers. His family was surprised that he was doing all I accused him of. They believed me, of course, because he couldn't deny it. I felt empty after bearing my soul out and telling everyone what I had been through for years dealing with his infidelity. My mom gave me a big hug and I began to cry uncontrollably. I was in so much pain. I didn't realize I had bottled up so much. I was someone who didn't like divorce. My husband didn't come back for days, and to be honest, I didn't care. When my kids came back from their outing, I told them that their parents would separate, but we both loved them so much and nothing was going to change that. When my husband finally came home, he was drunk. He handed me the signed papers as he packed some of his stuff and left. We got divorced and I got to keep the house and my kids were with me. He was allowed to visit them from time to time. He was mandated to pay for child support for all our kids. It's a relief that a painful phase of my life is over. Sometimes I wish that things were different as I wonder how my kids feel about the whole thing. I would say that I regret meeting and falling in love with my husband. Out of our tragic union came 3 sweet babies of mine, and I love them forever. His family was very supportive of my decision for divorce. Though everyone was sad at the outcome of our marriage, they understood why I couldn't do it anymore. My husband's parents told me how sorry they were. NTA, you should have gotten as far away from him as possible the first time he cheated. I personally cannot tolerate an unfaithful husband. NTA, with time, your kids would understand why you wanted a divorce. Their father was nothing to write home about, so you actually spare them the headache.
Next story.
My mom and I raised my younger sisters and I, now 24 female, 26 female, and 32 male, mostly alone. When we were really young, there were some POS boyfriends, including my bio dad, but when we were 2, and 8, she moved us to a new town and started fresh, just as a single mom. But when we were 8, 10, and 16, her boyfriend, partner, Henry, also moved in with us part-time and eventually full-time. I had an okay relationship with Henry. He was fine, but we weren't close. After high school, I enlisted. When we were 12, 14, and 20, he cheated and they broke up. He married the woman he cheated with. 001 seconds later, my mom was devastated, especially because she didn't date much to begin with, because she'd had bad experiences in the past, and really thought he was one of the good ones. He was the first guy she'd taken a chance with in a decade. Post-divorce fallout, Henry did keep in touch, but I didn't really respond. My middle sister did, though. She would still talk to Henry. My mom knew and hated it, but didn't stop it. And Henry and his wife would reward her for it by buying her things my mom couldn't afford to buy her, like a new MacBook, and even letting him give her a bit of money for her college tuition. He offered it to all three of us, but she's the only one who accepted. She's getting married, and my mom, as promised years ago, gave her a budget of $10,000 for her wedding. She had already told me in private that Henry and his wife would be in attendance, and I'd guessed they'd given her money as well. Even though she was telling my mom she, S.O., were covering the rest. She told me officially today that they were giving her $10,000. The wedding budget is $16,000, so she'll get to keep what she doesn't spend. She told me that she wanted my support in breaking this to our mom at some point before the wedding, and that at the actual wedding she wanted to acknowledge Henry, his wife, in their thank yous speech and have Henry at the head table. Her husband is estranged from his family, so the seating would go left to right with her three bridesmaids: our mom, her, the groom, Henry, the three groomsmen. I said that she could do what she wanted, but that I thought it was embarrassing for our mom, especially in front of our extended family. She got upset, and I finally said, "Look, if you want this so bad, fine, but I'm not sitting at the same table as him then, so I guess you'll be a groomsman." She said, "So you're not going to go?" And I said, "I'll go. I'm just not willing to sit 2 seats down from the guy who cheated on our mom and who you only like because he buys you things." She got even more upset and called me names on the phone and later over text. Our youngest sister refuses to get involved and just wants us to get along. She's never taken money from him, but she's also one of those people who hates people spending money on her. So she hasn't taken money from anyone else either. NTA, your sister needs to woman up here. If she wants a relationship with Henry, or at least Henry's money, so be it. But she can't compel the rest of you to be on board with that. And she certainly isn't going to be able to do it by hiding the truth. So tell her to tell Mom on her own before you need to give her a heads up she's going to be sharing a table with her cheating ex and his affair partner.
Next story.
Initially, I thought I was not the a-hole, but I may be one of those a-holes who use brutal honesty as an excuse for their attitude and wanted a neutral opinion on here. Okay, so basically my parents are immigrants who were in a loveless marriage, and I am the unfortunate result of that marriage. I know for a fact that they regret having me as a kid and let me know that directly and indirectly. It messed me up a lot initially, especially when they married their respective affair partners and had their own separate families, but I actually quite like this system that I have now. Neither of them really give a toss about me, which means I can do pretty much anything I want. Like, I can stay out however long I like, do whatever I like, that sort of stuff. Recently, my mother's twin brother passed away, and while my parents' marriage didn't really work out, my father was really close to that uncle, and they have been making preparations for the funeral and everything. My mother, who was really close to her brother, asked me to write an instrumental theme for his funeral. I am really good when it comes to art and music, mostly because it was my coping mechanism. I personally don't even know my uncle that much and hardly spent any time with him, and I have some very important projects due this month. I'm 16 in school, and creating an instrumental theme for such an occasion will take a lot of time. I told her this and added that if she wanted, I could create some kind of a portrait or any kind of artwork for him. Her reaction was very extreme, and after arguing about it some time, she said that she couldn't believe what a cold-hearted monster she raised. I am not bothered in the least about the fact that he died, mainly because, as I said, I wasn't close to him at all, and also he was drunk driving and hit a pole while driving at a very high speed, so no one else was involved in the accident. It's literally his own fault. I very calmly responded that 1, she didn't raise me. I did that myself. And 2, that were very rich, came from someone who basically abandoned their only child to play happy family with someone else's kids. I asked her where she had the audacity to call me such things, and she eventually broke down. I told her to shut up and to not bother me again, to which she did not stop crying and just kept looking at me like I was a ghost or something. I left after that. Now both sides of the family are now calling me an a-hole and a psycho, among other things. I haven't talked to my mother since, and my father lectured me once, which I listened to with closed ears. Am I really the one in the wrong here? Just to clarify some things here. No, I am not some kind of sociopath. And another Reddit said in the comments, don't start killing small animals. Really? It's not like I'm devoid of emotion. If my girlfriend, any of my friends or teachers would die, I would be a mess for months. It's just that in this case, my mother is like a part-time roommate to me, and I hardly knew my uncle. Hearing about his death was like reading about a drunk driver's death on the news. And people who are saying that my reaction to his death is extremely cold when I say it is his own fault. How would you feel if he had collided with another car and killed some innocent bystanders? Would you still feel sorry for him? He literally chose to ignore the most basic rule of driving that even teenagers who don't have a driving license know. As to the confrontation with my mother, I was extremely polite with her and gave her a valid reason as to why I couldn't make an original piece for her, and even gave alternate options. It's not like I told her to piss off as soon as she came to talk to me. It's when she started to insult me that I simply called her out on her bullshit. Again, a lot of people are assuming I went off on an angry rant. I didn't. I just told her that she doesn't get to call me a psycho, etc., etc., when she was the one who abandoned me as soon as she found another family. I just mentioned that her choice of words are quite ironic. I'm sorry, but her losing a close loved one doesn't give her the right to take her emotions out on me. Some people pointed out how I am basically becoming the same person as her. No, I would never treat someone that I actually love the way my parents have treated me. Again, if something happened to my girlfriend's family, etc., I would drop everything to be there for her. It's just that I am not willing to act like we have a normal relationship. Her current trauma doesn't trump the way she has neglected me throughout my childhood. NTA, she abandoned you when you were a child and is now asking you a favor. You can't do it, but have offered something else. And then she's angry and criticizing, blaming you. This is not a good situation. I'm sorry you've had this in your life. You deserve better.